Outside the Lord's Hall, a massive feast was laid out for the newly joined Rabbit clan and the hardworking pigmen. As everyone gathered around the long, narrow tables, Fang Hao stood to address his growing community. "Welcome," he announced, his voice carrying through the quiet air. "The territory will provide you with food, shelter, and protection. Tomorrow we work, but tonight we eat." As the fruit wine flowed, notifications flickered in his mind. Nancy, loyalty increased by 10 points. Mommy, loyalty increased by 10 points. The rabbit people, once fearful slaves who had lived in cages, now ate grilled meat and steamed fish with undisguised joy. The next morning, Fang Hao bolted awake, gasping from a nightmare of being stabbed. He felt a heavy physical pressure on his chest, but it wasn't a wound. It was Njia's leg, draped unceremoniously over him as she slept soundly. On his other side, Yer smiled softly, whispering a morning greeting. Flustered and wondering just how much they had all had to drink, Fang Hao quickly dressed and stepped out into the morning sun. Inside the room, Njia remained lost in a dream of the past. She saw herself as a young girl, following an old orc in a bearskin coat. She remembered the day she carried his frail, dying body to a distant orc city, fighting her way to the trial grounds to save him. She had emerged as a hero, a level 10 warrior, only to find the old man had already breathed his last. Njia woke with tears blurring her vision, whispering to the silence that she finally had a home. By midday, the atmosphere turned serious. Fang Hao gathered Fireblade and a groggy Njia in the hall. Fireblade, his memories altered by his transformation into a skeleton, knew nothing of the name Fang Hao uttered. "The skull-shattering tribe," Fang Hao said, his voice low. Njia's eyes sharpened instantly. "The skull-shattering tribe of the cold wind mountains." The air in the room grew heavy as the past and future began to collide. Fang Hao leaned in, his voice heavy with a newfound gravity. He questioned Anya, the orc hero, about a name that carried the weight of a landslide, the skull-shattering tribe. Anya exhaled slowly. "Sal," she whispered, "he is the tyrant of the cold wind mountains. He conquered every tribe in the range long ago." Fang Hao's mind raced. According to the message from Bronze Bull Tylok, this Sal was now marching toward them. Anya seemed skeptical. The mountains were days away, but she leaned over Fang Hao's shoulder to inspect the magical map within his Book of Lords. Her finger hovered over the northeast. "If war comes and you die," she added with a blunt, orcish pragmatism, "remember to break our contract first, so I can live to avenge you." Fang Hao rolled his eyes, but the threat was real. He turned to Fireblade, his voice commanding. "Fireblade, arrange for the soldiers to be promoted and strengthen the patrols. We cannot be caught sleeping." As Fireblade departed, Yer served a quiet breakfast. Amidst the clinking of silverware, a notification chimed. A private message from another lord appeared, offering a blueprint for a silkworm rearing house. The stranger demanded 5 units of rejuvenating spring water, but Fang Hao, ever the shrewd negotiator, held firm at 2. The deal was struck. Moments later, in a flash of light, a level 1 silkworm rearing house materialized in the clearing. It was a humble wooden structure requiring 500 wood and a single natural gemstone, but it was a seed for the future. However, the future was under siege. Fang Hao lay upon his bed and activated divine intervention. His consciousness surged across the landscape, finally settling into the cold, bone frame of a skeleton soldier within the pigman village. He opened his hollow eyes to a scene of chaos. Petty, the village chieftain, was trembling with rage. Before her stood a pigman, bloody, disheveled, and missing 2 fingers. "Robbers!" Petty shrieked, her face flushed a deep, angry red. "They are nothing but robbers." The village elders whispered of seeking the Lord's help, mentioning that Bolton should be sent at once, but they didn't need to send for him. The skeleton's jaw creaked open, the ghostly blue fire in its eyes flickering with intent. "What is wrong?" Fang Hao's voice echoed through the hall. "Is there something you need from me?" The word Lord * echoed through the room as every pigman rose in a synchronized, trembling bow. Fang Hao had arrived, possessing a cold, skeletal frame once more. Petty quickly offered his seat, his eyes darting toward a pitiful, injured pigman standing nearby. The poor creature was a mangled mess. 2 fingers had been brutally severed by the Knoll tribe to the east. Petty recounted the grim news. The Knolls had discovered the iron mine and through horrific torture demanded half of every harvest. Fang Hao remained silent, his chilling, unreadable skull face staring into the distance. When he learned the Knoll chieftain was merely a green Tier 3 hero with a population of 2,000, his decision was swift. "Prepare yourselves," he commanded coldly. "Wait for the army to come and wipe them out." Suddenly, Fang Hao's consciousness snapped back into his own body. He stepped out of his stone building, only to be met by Angia, who dropped a black iron treasure chest at his feet with a heavy thud. She claimed she found it near a spider nest, though her casual tone suggested a much more violent encounter. Fang Hao opened the lid to find a bone fish gun crafting blueprint, a tree stump stool blueprint, and 11 war coins. War was now inevitable. Fang Hao summoned Fireblade and organized a staggering force: 20,000 infantry, 5,000 skeleton ogres, and 15,000 necromancers, 40,000 soldiers in total. He ordered Fireblade to stay and guard the territory, choosing to take the unpredictable Angia with him to keep her out of trouble. As the massive army marched, Fang Hao and Angia lay on a cart shaded by a giant leaf. Angia peered at him with genuine curiosity. "Are you even alive?" she asked playfully. "Or are you the illegitimate son of some undead king?" Fang Hao sighed, closing his Book of Lords. "I am human, Angia, just remember, our territory belongs to the undead faction now. These creatures won't harm you." The journey ended as the pigman village appeared on the horizon. Petty was there to greet them, bowing low as the massive army halted. Fang Hao stepped off the carriage and moved toward his quarters, while 200 skeleton soldiers formed a grim, silent perimeter around the house, ensuring their lord would not be disturbed. Angia stood outside the house, her eyes wide with curiosity as she surveyed the pigman village. It was a strange sight, an orcish settlement nestled right outside their territory. Bolton stepped forward, his voice hurried as he made the introductions. "Chieftain, this is Miss Anya, a heroine by the lord's side." Petty, the clan chief, immediately bowed low. Angia, acting the part of the protective big sister, patted Petty on the shoulder. "If anyone bullies you in the future," she declared, "tell me, and I will protect you." The atmosphere shifted as a skeleton warrior stepped forward. It was Fang Hao, using his divine possession technique. Angia leaned in, her voice a low, horrified whisper. "You skinned yourself alive. Are you truly that cruel to yourself?" Fang Hao ignored the jabs. "There is a green tier 3 hero among the enemies," he explained calmly. "I will leave him to you." Angia, a powerful blue tier 7, simply nodded. The group set off, marching northeast for 20 minutes, through dense, mountain forests and tangled shrubs. Finally, they reached the edge of the jungle. Beyond the trees lay the Knoll village, a cluster of tents protected by high walls. Suddenly, a roar echoed from the tribe. The Knolls had spotted them. A tall, imposing figure with a rusty machete climbed the city wall. This was the leader, Clonigo. He looked down and burst into a cruel laughter. "Bolton, did your chieftain send me a girl? She is far too ugly. Let your chieftain stay with me instead, so we can all have some fun." Angia's eyes flashed with rage. She slid a tiger-shaped ring onto her finger. "I am going to tear his mouth apart," she hissed. Fang Hao didn't hesitate. "Form ranks and advance. Mages, attack from a distance." The air thundered as black magic missiles *bang bang bang erupted against the walls. A towering skeletal ogre smashed his adze into the stone, turning archers into mincemeat. With a deafening crash, the city gate collapsed. A tide of white bones swarmed into the city. Nigo, desperate and bloodshot, leaped into the air. With a muffled thud, his machete sliced a skeleton ogre completely in two. He was a whirlwind of destruction, until Angia stepped out from the shadows. "Ugly freak," she muttered, stretching her neck. Nigo roared, his body enveloped in a blood-red mist. He lunged, his blade flashing toward her ribs with his most lethal skill, *** bone removal. Nigo's knife was a blur, ruthless, fast, and aimed with a predator's precision. To any ordinary warrior, it would have been a death sentence, but Angia remained eerily calm. With a casual flick of her metal-clad fingers, she blocked the strike. Clang! The shockwave rippled through the air, whipping their clothes into a frenzy. Before Nigo could recover, Angia's other fist exploded for Ward. Bang! The force shattered the earth beneath his feet, sending him flying backward like a discarded toy. "Is that all you've got?" Angia sneered, her face full of disdain. Nigo spat blood, his arrogance replaced by a cold realization. This young woman was a high-ranking hero, far beyond his own level. "You're insane," he roared, his voice trembling with rage. "You're helping the undead. We are the ones on the same side." Angia stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. "I remember you saying you were going to kill me. Besides, you're far too ugly." With a final, desperate howl, Nigo lunged. He unleashed a barrage of blade shadows, a silver storm meant to overwhelm her. Angia didn't flinch. She danced through the steel, her movements becoming a ruthless blur. As Nigo bared his fangs for a strike at her neck, Angia's lips curled into a sneer. Skill red fangs. She twisted her waist sharply, driving her elbow hard as a mountain directly into his temple. Thud. Nigo's body went stiff and he slumped into the dirt, unconscious. Hey. Outside the village, Fang Hao waited patiently with Bolton. He wasn't worried. For him, every battle was an opportunity to accumulate more power and more troops. As the sounds of slaughter faded, Angia emerged from the gates, dragging Nigo's mangled, bloody body like a dead dog. He's still alive, she chirped. I thought he might be useful. Fang Hao gestured to his skeletons. Tie him up, layers of rope. If he resists, kill him. With the chieftain captured, the looting began. Fang Hao led the way into the tribe's hall. While the skeletons dismantled tents and gathered supplies, Fang Hao opened a silver treasure chest in the corner. Inside, he found 3 crafting blueprints, 80 war coins, and 4 beast fang stones. Suddenly, Angia handed him a crumpled piece of paper. It was a letter, written in the strange script of the orcs, addressed to Warchief Thrall of the Skullbreaker tribe. Nigo had been reporting the connection between the pigmen and the undead. Fang Hao's eyes narrowed. If this small tribe was in contact with the Skullbreakers, who else was keeping secrets? They walked back to the bound chieftain. Nigo glared at them, refusing to speak, until Angia delivered a brutal kick to his stomach. Talk, Fang Hao commanded softly, or I leave you to her. Nigo coughed up a mouthful of crimson and finally broke. Skullcrusher scouts, he wheezed. They came by not long ago, looking for information, for a price. How many times have you exchanged letters? Fang Hao's voice was cold, cutting through the heavy air of the Knoll camp. Nigo, the captive Knoll, gritted his teeth in frustration, hissing that no letters had been sent yet. Fang Hao didn't truly care if the creature was lying. He simply intended to learn what he could before locking him away forever. How many troops will they deploy, and when? Fang Hao pressed. Nigo sounded aggrieved as he barked back that he had only seen a reconnaissance team of nearly 100 from the Coldwind Mountains. Satisfied for now, Fang Hao ordered his guards to keep a close eye on the prisoner. Nearby, the skeletons had finished their grim work. A mountain of loot sat in the clearing. The haul was staggering: 1,840 Knoll machetes, 455 wooden bows, and over 355,000 pieces of leather. The resources were vast, including 31,000 units of wood and 25,000 units of stone. Load it all up, Fang Hao commanded, watching as the carts were prepared for the journey back to Pigman Village. Upon their arrival, Petty, the Pigman leader, stepped forward, her large ears flapping with nervous energy. Sir, what is the situation with the Knolls? She stammered. When Fang Hao smiled and confirmed the threat was resolved, Petty let out a heavy sigh of relief, patting her chest. Fang Hao's expression turned serious. Do you know of the Skullcrusher tribe? He asked. Petty frowned, shaking her head. Her village was far too small to have dealings with such a massive force. Undeterred, Fang Hao began swapping his skeleton guards for higher-tier units, preparing for the long march home. By 2 in the afternoon, the army reached the main territory. The warrior Angia, clearly impatient, dragged Nigo toward the cells, tossing him to Fireblade for processing. After a quick lunch prepared by Yi, Fang Hao turned his attention to his new blueprints. He focused on the leather-making frames. As he initiated the craft, his unique 100 times boost triggered. Suddenly 101 processing stands materialized before him. He realized that while his skeletons were tireless, his growing territory needed a larger living population to manage the farms and ranches. Finally, he turned his gaze toward the last blueprint, the improved leather boots. His expansion was only just beginning. Fang Hao Foku set on his work, meticulously crafting improved leather boots from thick hide and metal parts. But his mind wasn't on the leather. It was on the lingering threat of the shattered skull. Seeking an advantage, he consulted a map purchased for 1 war coin, a lead on a place called the Mysterious Cave. With 50,000 troops at his back and the spirited Angia by his side, Fang Hao cast divine descent upon a skeleton soldier. They marched for 3 hours, hauling over 100 supply carts, until they reached the destination. It wasn't a mountain opening, but a jagged, 5-meter-wide sinkhole, a scar in the earth that breathed a chilling, unsettling air. Below the rim lay a dark underground lake, its edges slick with moss. Make the rope ladders, Fang Hao commanded. They descended into the gloom, torches flickering against stone walls that bore the clear marks of human tools. Adventure, oh, I love it, Angia whispered, her eyes bright with excitement. Fang Hao, ever cautious, warned her to retreat if things turned deadly. The massive skeleton ogres remained above, too large for the narrow passage, as the two led 100 soldiers into the deep. The tunnel eventually opened into a breathtaking, silent world, a massive palace carved directly into the mountain's heart. Luminous stone lamps cast a soft, ghostly glow over the intricate carvings. Is someone living here? Angia breathed, but the only life was mechanical. From the shadows, 4 figures detached themselves from the walls, the gargoyle construct warriors. These Tier 5 monsters creaked with the sound of grinding stone and rusted gears. Fang Hao's heart hammered as he ordered his ranks to engage. But Angia didn't wait. She lunged, her fist slamming into a gargoyle's chest with a deafening crack. Stone shattered, revealing a complex interior of gears and wires, a robot hidden in a shell of rock. While the skeletons struggled against the remaining constructs, Angia tore through them like a whirlwind. When the dust finally settled, she tossed a transparent jade sphere to Fang Hao. It was an energy core, the pulsing blue and white heart of the fallen machines. Their expedition had only just begun. Fang Hao studied the glowing energy core, finally realizing its true purpose. It was a battery, a vital source of power for the mechanical wonders of this world. He gestured toward the pile of scrap on the floor, his voice echoing through the chamber. See if there is anything else worth taking. The skeletons moved with mechanical precision. By the time they finished, Fang Hao had secured 6 energy cores, 12 metal parts, and 4 precision parts, a rare find essential for his musket blueprints. The group pressed deeper into the underground palace, arriving at an arched stone passageway. Resting at its base was a black iron treasure chest. Fang Hao opened it without hesitation, revealing a crafting blueprint for a green-tier knight sword, a low-level spirit potion, and 11 war coins. He noted the sword required cast iron and hardened wood, materials most lords couldn't dream of finding. They transitioned into the second level. The space was smaller but far more opulent, decorated with murals depicting human life. Fang Hao felt a chill. Was this a tomb? His thoughts were cut short as 12 gargoyles, warriors, spearmen, and a massive fire lizard shook off their stony shells. Anya, go easy on them, Fang Hao commanded, raising his shield. Don't damage the cores. The battle was brutal. The fire lizard gargoyle lunged forward, opening its massive maw to spew a torrent of liquid flame. Several skeleton warriors were instantly incinerated, reduced to nothing but ash. Spread out, Fang Hao roared. Focus on the lizard. 20 minutes of clanging steel later, victory was theirs, though 80 skeletons lay shattered. Fang Hao summoned 300 more reinforcements before looting the area. He discovered blueprints for a blacksmith shop and a wooden mask. The mask was a sinister thing, imbued with the power to strike fear into the hearts of the living. Finally, they passed through a narrow corridor into the third and final chamber. The air grew heavy. Gold lampstands replaced the stone ones, surrounded by pottery, jewelry, and a fractured stone coffin. But there were no statues here. Instead, in the very center of the room, a 2-meter-tall construct clad in heavy iron armor knelt in silent vigil. A Tier 7 gargoyle construct. The real fight was about to begin. In the heart of the hall, the gargoyle stood tall. It was a massive construct, clad in heavy metal armor, guarding a stone coffin with a long, curved sword. Even from a distance, the air felt heavy with oppression. Fang Hao tilted his head, whispering to his companion, "Is there a problem? Should we call for reinforcements?" Angia, a Tier 7 hero, simply cracked her knuckles, her fighting spirit palpable. How could I be no match? H for a Tier 7 unit, she dismissed. As they stepped into the circle, the machine-like guardian began to tremble, scattering earth as it rose to its full, terrifying height. The battle began with a thunderous boom. Angia spun through the air, dodging a lethal swing and burying her fist into the gargoyle's waist. The iron armor buckled instantly under her strength. The construct fought back, opening its maw to fire a brilliant white energy ray, a beam as thick as a gun barrel. Angia rolled beneath the searing light, leaped high into the air, and struck with the force of her blood-red fangs. With a deafening roar, the entire hall trembled as the gargoyle's head was ripped clean from its neck. It rolled to Fang Hao's feet, its mouth still crackling with dying electricity. Angia retrieved the energy core and tossed it to Fang Hao. They moved toward the stone coffin, pushing the heavy lid aside, only to find dark debris and stains. The body had long since decomposed. Damn it, Fang Hao cursed under his breath. We're losing money, search everywhere, take the jewels, the lampstands, even peel the metal plating off the statues. As the skeletons looted the chamber, a sudden shout echoed. Court death, Angia screamed, lunging into a dark, flickering corner. A transparent female figure emerged from the shadows, hovering in the air. This was a Tier 3 ghost, beautiful, ethereal, and visibly shaken. Wait, she cried, her voice sounding thin and ghostly. I am but a lonely spirit born in this tomb. Take what you need, but I beg of you let me join your ranks. I wish to leave this place." Fang Hao was surprised by her intelligence. A Tier 3 ghost, who could speak, he looked the spirit in the eyes. "I cannot trust your word alone," he said coldly. "I have a slave contract. If you sign it, I will protect you. Once you prove your loyalty, I will set you free. Are you willing?" Fang Hao stood before the ghost fox, his expression unreadable. He didn't trust her, not yet. In this world, trust was a luxury bought only with contracts and binding rules. "If you are willing to sign," he offered coolly, "you will have a place in my territory." A heavy, suffocating silence fell over the tomb, until finally the ghost bowed with a graceful, ethereal shimmer. "My lord, I am willing." With the pact sealed, the skeleton soldiers surged into action, stripping the hall of every hidden treasure. Fang Hao turned his attention to the gold treasure chest. As the lid creaked open, a blinding flash of light erupted, nearly searing his vision. One by one, the blueprints materialized. There was a green-tier black iron open-face helmet and a simple handsaw, followed by a mysterious communicating conch for telepathy. But then, the air seemed to thicken as the blue-tier gargoyle construct and the purple-tier golden mammoth construct blueprints appeared. Fang Hao marveled at the descriptions. He imagined a massive mammoth plated in golden armor trampling through enemy lines like a dragon of war. It was a terrifying, beautiful vision of power, though the sheer amount of materials required made him frown. "Take everything," Fang Hao commanded, "even the glowing stones on the walls." The procession climbed the rope ladder, emerging from the dark pit into the fading light of dusk. As the skeletons and the new ghost began their long march home, Fang Hao released his divine descent, his consciousness snapping back into his own body within the safety of his stone manor. He sat up and stretched, his mind racing through his new inventory. Blacksmith shop blueprints, knight swords, healing potions. This haul would change everything. It would make the looming threat of the Skullcrusher tribe feel manageable. Outside, the territory was alive with quiet activity. Irene was lecturing the new rabbit girls like a stern little schoolteacher, gesturing wildly as they bowed in respect. Year approached him softly, her voice a gentle murmur. "Master, shall we prepare dinner?" "Wait a moment," Fang Hao replied, looking toward the horizon. "Anya should be back soon." While he waited, he checked his trade listings, searching desperately for shadow stones, the one resource he needed to upgrade his buildings before the coming war. Finally, just as the last light of day vanished, Anya and her team appeared at the gates, returning home at last. The skeleton soldiers marched back into the territory, their heavy footsteps echoing as they hauled the spoils of war into the warehouses. Njia strolled into the main hall, casually tossing a backpack filled with blueprints and energy cores toward Fang Hao. He caught it against his chest, recording the treasures into the Lord's book with a satisfied nod. These were the true prizes of the raid. "That little ghost is still waiting outside," Njia muttered between bites of fruit. "Should we let her in?" Fang Hao settled onto his throne of bones. "Let her in." "Mom." Ents later, a translucent woman drifted into the hall. She froze, her ghostly eyes wide with confusion. The master she had followed was a skeleton only moments ago, yet here sat a man in the flesh. "Wraith," Fang Hao's voice rumbled with authority. "One last chance, join my territory, or leave now." Without hesitation, the ghost lifted the hem of her shimmering skirt and bowed low. "My lord, I am willing." They signed the contract not with blood but with a shared spark of will. A gray-blue fingerprint manifested on the parchment. Because they both belonged to the undead faction, her loyalty began at a solid 70 points. "You need a name," Fang Hao mused, watching her expectant gaze. "We shall call you Xiaoyu. I hope you find a life without worries." She beamed, though the smile on her spectral face looked chillingly sinister. "Loyalty, 75. Fang Hao examined her attributes. She was a Tier 3 spirit with a unique quest, unfinished business. To unlock her memories and hero potential, he would need to find 12 swords of atonement. When asked about the weapons, however, Xiaoyu simply tilted her head. Her past remained a thick fog. Later that evening, while Yi served dinner, Njia regaled the wide-eyed maid with tales of their tomb-raiding exploits. But as darkness fell, Fang Hao stepped back outside into the glow of the magical streetlights. Xiaoyu drifted toward him like a pale mist. "A few rules," Fang Hao cautioned as they walked. "Do not disturb the Lick Nelson, and do not harm my people." He opened the Lord's book near the undead barracks. With a flash of light, a wooden house appeared, then surged upward, transforming into a grand two-story residence. Xiaoyu twirled in the air with joy. Loyalty, 80. Is there anything else you need? Fang Hao asked. The wooden coffin in the warehouse, sir, she whispered, her voice like wind through dry leaves. The one for raising corpses. May I have it for my room? Fang Hao remembered the exquisite wooden coffin tucked away in the corner of his warehouse, a prize plundered from the Yinfeng fortress. Xiaoyu, her ethereal form flickering like a dying candle, looked at him with a mix of hesitation and hope. Her old stone coffin was shattered, and she needed a sanctuary to anchor her soul. Is that all right? She whispered. If you have other uses for it, then it is fine. Fang Hao shook his head. It is yours, Xiaoyu. He watched as skeleton warriors hauled the furniture into her desolate wooden house. As the blue-grade, corpse-nourishing coffin was settled into her bedroom, Xiaoyu drifted inside, her spirit instantly finding peace within the enchanted wood. Her loyalty surged to 90 points, a testament to her newfound gratitude. Leaving her to rest, Fang Hao marched toward the industrial zone. He opened the Lord's book, his fingers hovering over the construction page. With a thought, the level 1 blacksmith shop began to materialize. Wood, stone, leather, and hemp rope weaving together into a functional forge. He didn't stop there. He poured resources into the structure, upgrading it rapidly until it reached level 5. The cost was immense, thousands of units of stone and wood, metal parts, and rare crimson flame essence. But the result was a masterclass facility that hummed with potential. Recruit, he commanded. Suddenly, the system's 100 times boost roared to life. In a blinding flash of light, 101 skeleton blacksmiths appeared. They stood tall in thick leather aprons, clutching heavy metal hammers, their eye sockets glowing with a steady, ghostly blue soul fire. One stepped forward, a skeleton named Kulin. Fang Hao appointed him as the lead, tasking the group with repairing the warehouse's vast stores of equipment. As the moon hung low and hazy in the sky, Fang Hao began his walk back toward the manor. A raspy, desperate voice drifted from the shadows near the luminous stones. My lord, human lord, please let me go. It was Clonigo, the Knoll chieftain, huddled in a black iron cage. He was battered, bound, and surrounded by a silent wall of skeleton guards. Do you have anything new to tell me? Fang Hao asked, his voice cold and distant. Nigo stammered, sensing his life hanging by a thread. I will pledge my loyalty. I will go undercover, gather intelligence, anything. Fang Hao paused, his silhouette long against the dirt path. The idea of a spy, an undercover agent among the living, was a tempting proposition indeed. In the damp, heavy darkness of the cells, Nigo clings to life by a thread. He remains alive not for his utility, but because the necromancer, Nelson, cannot yet transform him into a skeleton hero, and the summer heat makes the thought of a rotting corpse unbearable. Nigo's voice cracks as he pleads from behind the iron bars. I can enter the Skullcrusher tribe for you, my lord. I will be your eyes. Fang Hao watches him silent, his mind churning. An undercover agent is a brilliant idea, but Nigo is a snake. There is no reconciliation for a man whose race you have wiped out. Without a word, Fang Hao turns his back on the prisoner's desperate ramblings and walks away into the night. The next morning, the sun rises over a busy territory. Fang Hao descends the stairs of the manor, passing the kitchen where Yer is busy preparing breakfast. Anya's door remains shut. She is never one for early mornings. Outside, the rabbit girls greet him with bright smiles and deep bows. For them, this place is a paradise of safety and full bellies. Fang Hao strides toward the logging camp, where 1,000 skeletons stand ready. He opens his crafting menu and selects the simple handsaw. He orders 30, but as the 100 times amplification triggers, 3,030 saws materialize on the grass. The skeletons move in rhythmic unison, swapping their crude tools for sharp, efficient steel. But the day's work has only just begun. Fang Hao returns to the heart of his territory to outfit his growing army of nearly 50,000. He crafts 300 black iron knight swords, the amplification surges, and 30,300 blades shimmer in the light. Next, he produces 50,500 open-face helmets, followed by an equal number of wooden masks. Fang Hao picks up a mask, his fingers tracing the demonic carvings. It is more than just wood and paint. It carries a level 1 fear effect, a curse designed to shatter the morale of the living. He looks out at his silent, armored legion and smiles. The Skullcrusher tribe has no idea what is coming for them. The wooden mask's greatest power lay in the fear it inspired. Level 1 fear could shatter an enemy's resolve, and against the undead, the effect was even more devastating. Fang Hao imagined it, a vast, silent army of skeletons, their faces hidden behind these macabre visages sweeping across the mountains. Even the bravest soul would tremble. Go and call Fireblade over, Fang Hao commanded a nearby rabbit girl. The girl fiddled with her fingers, her voice a tiny whisper. Which lord is Fireblade Master? The skeleton hero in the gleaming red armor, Fang Hao explained patiently. She scurried off, returning moments later with the imposing figure. Fireblade exuded the aura of a great general, his crimson plate armor catching the light as he bowed. Fang Hao gestured to the piles of new gear. Equip the soldiers with these, move the outdated equipment to the supply area. With the task delegated, Fang Hao headed toward the stone tower for breakfast. He met Angia on the stairs. She was rubbing her eyes and yawning, looking like she hadn't a single care in the world. Wow, you're up so early, she teased. Fang Hao simply rolled his eyes. As Yer served their meal, he opened the Book of Lords to check the regional chat. The channel was buzzing. One lord was desperately seeking stone bricks for a level 4 mansion, sparking a heated debate about whether anyone, even the legendary Fang Hao, could have reached such a high level yet. A private notification chimed. A lord was offering 13 shadow stones. After a brief negotiation, Fang Hao traded 52 iron swords for the rare materials. Then, a more unusual message appeared. It was the man who had previously requested custom linen underwear, complaining that his leather pair was too rough to bear. I'll look into it when I have time, Fang Hao replied, suppressing a laugh before closing the book. After finishing his meal, he gathered Angia and the ghost girl, Xiaoyu. They walked toward the iron cage where a weakened jackal hero lay. The creature caught sight of Angia and immediately froze, pretending to be dead to avoid another beating from the crazy woman. Xiaoyu hovered in the shade, avoiding the harsh sunlight. Fang Hao looked at her, his expression serious. Xiaoyu, I want you to possess his body. You are going to the cold wind mountains to gather intelligence for me. Xiaoyu's pale face clouded with hesitation. My lord, you want me to possess a hero. How is that possible? Xiaoyu hovered in her ethereal form, her expression a mask of pure shock. As a mere Tier 3 unit, the idea of possessing a hero, an entity far beyond her strength, seemed impossible. But Fang Hao had a theory. If the target was a soulless undead, a mere husk, could she inhabit it? Xiaoyu trembled slightly, her voice a ghostly whisper. My lord, I do not know if I can succeed. I have never attempted such a thing. No rush, Fang Hao replied calmly. We will try it soon. Before they could proceed, the Lick scholar, Nelson, emerged from his sanctum. Fang Hao quickly explained the looming threat of the skull-shattering tribe and his plan for infiltration. Nelson glanced at the ghost, who bowed deeply. In respect, and nodded. We shall take this knoll to the organ museum, the Lick rasped. Skeleton soldiers hauled the captive knoll, Nigo, into the museum. Outside, Njia nudged Fang Hao, whispering, Who is that? I have never seen him before. That is Scholar Nelson, Fang Hao introduced. Suddenly, a heart-wrenching, blood-curdling howl echoed from behind the museum doors. The sound sent a chill down their spines. Moments later, Nelson stepped out, leaning heavily on his staff. It is done, little ghost, try it now. Xiaoyu dissolved into a wisp of gray mist, surging into the jackal's corpse. The body's eyes snapped open. The knoll stood up abruptly, crossed its scarred legs, and performed a delicate, ladylike bow. Sir, do you think this will work? It was a bizarre sight, a mangy, scarred knoll acting with the grace of a maiden, but the possession was a success. You have 5 days, Nelson warned. After that, the body will rot. You must return or find a new vessel. After a final briefing on safety, Xiaoyu rode out toward the cold wind mountains, clutching a teleportation scroll. As the dust settled, Irene approached Fang Hao. Master, the skeleton merchant has arrived. In the market area, Ruhr the merchant marveled at the territory's growth. In only 7 days, Fang Hao had built a fortress. Ruhr tapped his jeweled cane, revealing his newest wares, a frost orange crafting blueprint for 10 war coins, a black powder manufacturing blueprint for 25, and a blue-tier craftsmanship mill blueprint for 30. The expansion of Fang Hao's power had only just begun. Fang Hao stood before the skeleton merchant, Ruhr, scanning the new inventory. The territory's upgrade to a stone building level had clearly shifted the market. Gone were the common white scraps, replaced by vibrant greens, deep blues, and even a single regal purple scroll. I'll take them all, Fang Hao declared, handing over 435 warfare coins. He watched as Ruhr handed over the blueprints: the frosty orange soap, black powder manufacturing, a blue-grade craftsmanship mill, an advanced hero contract, and a mysterious organ jar. As Ruhr prepared to depart, Fang Hao gestured toward a nearby stone bench. "Mr. Ruhr, stay a moment. My manor has reached the stone building level. How do I begin selling my goods to the outside world?" Ruhr paused, his skeletal jaw creaking as he sat. "To sell through the market, one must join the Sky Eye Merchant Alliance," he explained in a raspy whisper. "It is no simple task. You need power, wealth, and the recommendation of an existing member." Ruhr let out a dry, rattling laugh. "Since the world rarely deals with the undead, I can speak to my master, the Bone King Audis, on your behalf." With a promise to return with news, Ruhr vanished through the teleportation array. Fang Hao didn't waste a moment. He opened the Lord's Book and activated the blueprint for the level 1 fine mill. In a flash of light, wood, stone, and iron fused together to form a sturdy structure. It was perfect, though it sat silent for now, awaiting the grain that would eventually feed his growing empire. By noon, the scent of lunch filled the air. Yer called him to the table, and while he ate, Fang Hao scrolled through the world chat. The channel was a chaotic mix of bored survivors and desperate traders. Fang Hao typed a simple message: "Buying all grains and seeds. Contact me privately for bulk orders." The channel erupted instantly. "Holy crap, boss, Fang Hao is speaking. Is he starting a farm? The legend is actually planting seeds." Amidst the flood of notifications, one message caught his eye from a user named Lu Chi. "Boss, I have a basket of wheat seeds the size of a wash basin. I traded them from a local village." Fang Hao leaned back, a faint smile playing on his lips. The blueprints were recorded, the mill was built, and now the seeds were coming. The gears of industry were finally beginning to turn. The militiamen sent out by Lu Chi on patrol had discovered something rare: a local human village. After a bit of reconnaissance, Lu Chi found the villagers were friendly, leading to a fruitful exchange of food and seeds. Fang Hao, seeing an opportunity to expand his own resources, reached out to trade. "How do you plan to make the exchange?" Fang Hao asked. Lu Chi's response was unexpected. "Armor, please. I need armor, boss." While others prioritized weapons, Lu Chi was focused on defense. Fang Hao agreed to the trade, handing over 5 hardwood shields in exchange for a basket of wheat seeds. With the seeds in hand, Fang Hao immediately moved to his spirit fields. He spent his resources, 1,500 wood, 800 stone, and 5 natural gems to expand the area. He rapidly upgraded 5 first-level spirit fields all the way to level 5. As the labor skeletons took over the planting, Fang Hao gathered his men and the fierce Njia to explore the surrounding wilds. By dusk, they returned with a significant prize: a silver treasure chest containing a blueprint for siege ladders. These simple tools would allow his skeleton army to scale enemy walls with ease, a much-needed tactical advantage. The next morning, Fang Hao woke to a soft touch. He opened his eyes to see Yer lying beside him, watching him with a sweet, devoted smile. Her loyalty had reached 100%, and she moved through his bedroom with the quiet grace of someone who felt completely at home. "Master," she whispered, "Mr. Sawyer came this morning. It seems he has something to discuss." After dressing, Fang Hao stepped out into the bright morning air. He was met by Fireblade, who reported that patrols on the north and west sides had been reinforced to watch for orc scouts. Satisfied with the security, Fang Hao headed to the tailor shop. Sawyer, the skeleton cutter, proudly presented his latest work. Fang Hao tried on a new beige cotton robe, simple, comfortable, and perfect for life within the territory. But the real project lay in the maid outfits Sawyer was producing. Under Fang Hao's unique design guidance, the workshop was busy crafting bold new attire, from bunny girl costumes to school uniforms. It was a strange addition to a land of skeletons and orcs, but as the territory grew, so did its peculiar new culture. After Fang Hao's bold design concepts sparked a creative fire in Sawyer the tailor, the Lord returned to his stone building, accompanied by a silent procession of skeletons carrying stacks of fresh clothing. Inside, the rich, savory aroma of a head chef's breakfast filled the air. Yer, the manor's lead rabbit girl maid, greeted him with a warm smile. Fang Hao handed her the new garments. "Try these on," he said, a hint of pride in his voice. Moments later, 3 figures emerged with lowered heads and flushed faces. 2 maids wore black and white outfits with short skirts and sturdy leather boots. But Yer, she wore the masterpiece. It was a low-cut, tight-fitting black jumpsuit, complete with a fluffy rabbit tail and twitching reddish ears. Fang Hao dubbed it the bunny girl costume, a name that made Yer's embarrassment deepen, though she promised to wear it for him in private. Suddenly, a sleepy Angia joined them, seeing the others in their new finery. She pouted indignantly. "Where is mine?" she grumbled, crossing her arms. Fang Hao chuckled, promising her a set from the 101 skeleton tailors currently working around the clock. With the manner settled, Fang Hao turned his attention to business. He opened the Book of Lords and messaged a specific contact, the lord famous for wearing uncomfortable leather underwear. The trade was swift and lucrative. 5 pairs of simple cotton boxers for 1 natural gem and 1 essence of earth, a perfect trade. Emboldened by the easy profit, Fang Hao posted a bold advertisement to the global chat channel, selling men's and women's underwear, 2 pieces for 1 rare resource, cotton clothing, 1 piece for 3 rare resources. The chat erupted instantly. Some mocked the rustic and peasant-like style of the basic clothes, while others, the more eccentric players of the New World, began a bizarre bidding war for used garments. To silence the critics, Fang Hao shared a single link, the maid outfit. The channel went silent for a heartbeat, before exploding in a frenzy of pure excitement. "Boss Fang Hao, you are playing a very big game," one user shouted, while others begged him to put the outfits on the market immediately. As the sun rose higher, Fang Hao realized he hadn't just built a territory, he had ignited a fashion revolution. Fang Hao mused over the strange reality of the market. While ordinary clothes lingered on the shelves, the maid outfits vanished in under 5 minutes, snatched up even by male lords seeking to find their true selves in this harsh new world. Retreating to his bedroom, he surveyed his progress. The surrounding lands were picked clean, but the threat of the Skullcrusher tribe loomed. He needed to grow faster. Closing his eyes, Fang Hao cast Divine Descent. His consciousness surged across the distance, igniting the soul fire in the eyes of a skeleton warrior stationed at the Pigman village. There, Petty greeted him with scouting reports of the Dragon Burial Cave, a rugged, resource-poor mountain range to the north. "No need to explore further," Fang Hao commanded through the skeleton's teeth. "Just have a guide ready for my arrival." Returning to his own body, Fang Hao was met by Anya, now twirling playfully in a new maid outfit. She looked less like a gentle servant and more like a beautiful troublemaker. When he mentioned their destination, her eyes shimmered with excitement. "The Dragon Burial Cave," she asked eagerly. "Did a real dragon die there?" "Maybe he replied, trying to temper her expectations, "or maybe it's just a name for a big snake." After a brief word to Yer and Huron, the expedition began. Fang Hao and Anya set out with a massive army of 50,000 troops. Thanks to the marching bonuses from his level 5 stone tower and the bone throne, the legion moved with unnatural speed. At the Pigman village, they met their guide, Bolton, who had prepared carts pulled by skullwolves to carry back any potential spoils. The journey stretched for 5 long hours. The sheer distance began to strain Fang Hao's mental energy as he maintained his connection to the front lines. Finally, the rugged peaks of the mountain range loomed over them. Bolton warned of the treacherous path ahead, but Anya merely grinned. With her specialized pathfinding skills reducing the strain of the terrain by 20%, the army pressed forward, marching deep into the shadows of the mountains. Bolton led the team deep into the mountain crevices, a desolate landscape of howling winds and barren stone walls. Just as they neared their destination, the ground began to tremble violently. Rocks tumbled down the slopes, and the heavy, rhythmic thud of running footsteps echoed from the path ahead. Suddenly, several Tier 6 stone elementals charged. These 3-meter-tall giants of living rock roared, hurling massive boulders toward the group like cannonballs. "Raise your shields," Fang Hao thundered. The impact was deafening. Bang, bang, bang. Iron-covered shields groaned and deformed under the brutal barrage. Then, the undead legion surged forward like a rushing swarm. A massive skeleton ogre collided with the lead elemental, their frames clashing with a bone-shaking thud. Iron blades struck stone, sending sparks flying into the gray air. Then came Angia. With a look of calm disdain, she slipped on her tiger-fingered brass knuckles and leaped. Her fist connected with a stone head, boom, and the seemingly indestructible rock shattered like fragile porcelain. In moments, the monsters were reduced to nothing more than piles of rubble. As the dust settled, Fang Hao surveyed the field, clean up the battlefield, collect the spoils, and search for treasure. He turned to Bolton and gasped. The pigman's head was a mask of crimson, blood dripping from jagged cuts caused by flying stone shards. "It is nothing, sir," Bolton muttered, wiping his eyes. "Just a few scratches." "Go to the rejuvenating spring when we return," Fang Hao ordered firmly. He then glanced at Angia, who merely scoffed at his concern, radiating her usual defiance. The spoils were gathered: 12 nature gems, 16 traces of earth, and a silver treasure chest. Inside, Fang Hao discovered blueprints for a temperature-controlled cellar and stone paving slabs. With the battlefield cleared, the team pressed on for another 30 minutes until they reached a massive, man-made opening, the entrance to the Dragon Burial Cave ***. It stood 5 meters wide, flanked by ancient, crumbling ruins. "Bolton, stay at the rear," Fang Hao commanded as they stepped into the gloom. They ignited their glow stones, casting a faint, flickering light against the damp walls. After only a few steps, the soul fire in Fang Hao's eye sockets trembled. There, embedded in the cavern walls, were the unmistakable grayish-white crystals he knew all too well, shadow stones ***. The Lord's Manor had finally ascended to a level 5 stone building, yet a shadow hung over his progress. A desperate shortage of shadow stones had ground all undead construction to a halt. Fang Hao had pleaded in the trade channels for days, but few answered. Now, standing within the damp walls of a hidden cave, his eyes gleamed with undisguised joy. Shadow stones were everywhere. "Collect every single one," Fang Hao commanded, his voice echoing in the cramped passage. As the team pressed forward, they pried 27 stones from the earth. Fang Hao pondered the find. Shadow stones only thrive where death is absolute. Could a dragon truly lie dead within these depths? Suddenly, Angia's fluffy animal ears twitched. She stared sharply into the gloom. In the darkness, the shadows began to move, shifting like viscous black ink. "There is danger," she whispered. Fang Hao looked up just as a Tier 8 shadow lunged. "Prepare for battle." Steel clashed against darkness. These were not mere ghosts, they were faceless horrors, human outlines composed of pure, suffocating malice. The skeletons fought with relentless precision, and within minutes the shadows vanished, leaving behind rare traces of death. The tunnel narrowed, forcing the army to march 2 by 2. The air grew heavy, oppressive, until finally, a burst of brilliant sunlight blinded them. They emerged not onto a mountain peak, but into a massive, hidden basin. In the very center lay the colossal, ivory ribs of a dragon ski. The ground beneath it was stained a gruesome, permanent blood red. Monsters of all kinds, shadow panthers and corrupted corpses, swarmed the remains. "A dragon really did die here," Angia exclaimed, her eyes dancing with excitement. Fang Hao's soul fire flickered. This skeleton would catapult his military might into a new era. "Kill them all," he ordered. As the undead tide surged forward, a sudden asterisk whoosh sliced through the air. A cold glint of steel flew straight for Fang Hao's head. Clang! Angia's fist intercepted the projectile, a jagged dagger. Fang Hao stepped back, his movements sluggish due to the high latency of his divine descent spell. He looked toward the ridge. Standing there was a woman clad in tattered, rotten armor, her skin as dark as the void. A corrupted elf, a green Tier 9 hero. "Take care of her," quickly Fang Hao hissed. Angia blurred into motion, leaping like a predator. The elf drew a short sword, the blades collided with a deafening ring, and the assassin was sent hurtling back into the stone wall. The real battle had only just begun. Angia's power was extraordinary. In their first encounter, the corrupted elf was sent flying backward, crashing into the mountainside with a heavy thud. Earth and rocks exploded everywhere. Without hesitation, Angia rushed forward, intending to press her advantage. The elf slid down the rocky slope just as Angia's fist aimed for his head. He dodged at an odd angle, his short sword swinging rapidly toward her ribs, a movement that was fluid and exceptionally graceful. Angia twisted her body, a slight smile playing on her lips. "Interesting," she whispered. In the next heartbeat, her fists rained down like a storm. The elf was entangled, forced back again and again until he staggered. That was when Angia unleashed her skill, Red Fangs. With a powerful twist of her waist, she struck with her elbow, annihilating the corrupted spirit. His body did not fall, it simply dissolved into a puddle of black mud. Fang Hao walked over, glancing at the dark stain. "You won." "Of course," Angia replied confidently. "She had skills, but she ran into me." Fang Hao sighed, looking at the empty space where a body should be. "Hurry and help the skeletons," he ordered. "The sooner we finish, the sooner we can go back for dinner." As the battle in the basin ended, Fang Hao approached the massive dragon skeleton. It evoked an indescribable sense of awe. Upon inspection, he frowned. The ground beneath the bones was carved with intricate runes, a massive disc. This dragon hadn't just died, it was a sacrifice. Angia patted the fossilized bone. Do you need all of this? Why don't we save a section so Yi can make us some soup? Fang Hao slapped his forehead in exasperation. Are you crazy? I am afraid of being poisoned. While the skeletons gathered the spoils, a particular weapon caught Fang Hao's eye. It was the elf's blade, Light Feather, an orange-tier short sword that granted its wearer immunity to all negative status effects. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a royal amulet, a gift for a frail princess. The haul was incredible. They had obtained 312 traces of death, 12 traces of gods, 5-star silver, 12 dragon crystals, and most importantly, 137 shadow stones. Sir, you'd better come over here, Bolton called out, leading them toward a towering stone figure. It was a 10-meter-tall deity with a grotesque, troll-like face and bulging muscles, holding a spiked club high. This was the Idol of Slaughter, a special building that would grant the territory a 10% increase to attack power and skill recovery. Fang Hao looked up at the terrifying statue. The god of slaughter was now watching over them. Deep within the mountain basin, a statue of a fertility goddess stood silent, a monument to growth that Fang Hao wished he could haul away, but it was carved into the very stone. Bolton's voice broke the calm, announcing a smoother path and a golden treasure chest. Fang Hao approached the chest with a weary sigh, feeling slighted that such a grand, monstrous spectacle yielded only gold. He pried it open, discovering blueprints for a slaughter idol, heavy troll armor, and a cryptic unnamed map. He realized then this place was a graveyard of trolls. He scrutinized the slaughter idol blueprint, a grotesque, terrifying thing compared to the elegant goddess, but its power was undeniable. It promised a 10% boost to attack and skill recovery, a necessary addition to his growing wishing well complex. He glanced at the troll armor plans and smirked. Finally, he could replace the crude iron shields his skeleton trolls wore, gear that the bunny girls had literally tied to their bones with rope. It was time for a proper, ironclad upgrade. Load the bones, Fang Hao commanded. The skeletons swarmed the massive dragon frame, sect, ironing the keel and lashing it to carts with rhythmic, clicking precision. By dusk, the long, bone-laden convoy reached the pigman village. Fang Hao sat up in his bed, his head throbbing with a sudden dizziness from the strain of his divine intervention. Petty, the pigman, rushed to offer a horse, but Fang Hao simply rejoined his troops for the final 2-hour march home. Back at the territory, Yi prepared dinner while Fang Hao focused on the conversion site. He sacrificed his shadow stones, watching as the pool expanded to nearly 10 meters in length. The massive dragon bones were heaved into the dark, swamp-like depths, sinking slowly into the gloom. A timer appeared, 7 hours and 59 minutes. It was the longest wait he had ever endured. To pass the time, he summoned the slaughter idol. Near the fertility goddess, a shimmering blue light flickered, carving a miniature version of the cave's grotesque deity into existence. As the light faded, a crimson halo pulsed outward, engulfing the entire territory. Every soldier felt the surge, a 10% increase in carnage and power as the god of slaughter took his place. The statue of slaughter was finally complete, its dark bonus instantly surging through every unit in Fang Hao's army. Though its appearance was grim, its power was undeniable. Fang Hao strode toward the undead quarters to begin the next phase of his expansion. He focused first on the underground cemeteries, the very foundation of his labor force. With a heavy investment of shadow stones and timber, he triggered the level 5 upgrade. Suddenly, his 100 times boost roared to life, and 2,020 skeleton laborers materialized in a silent, bone-white wave. He sent them marching toward the warehouses to begin their work. Next, the Corridor of the Dead reached level 5, unlocking the formidable Tier 3 skeleton riders. With his territory already saturated with troops, Fang Hao held off on recruitment, turning his attention instead to the Necromancer Tower to finalize the faction's upgrades. Inside the Lord's stone mansion, the atmosphere was far warmer. Yi, dressed in her maid's uniform, moved gracefully through the kitchen, while the energetic Angia boasted about the day's battles against the stone men. When Angia demanded dragon bone for a savory soup, Fang Hao teased her, claiming the legendary bone was already gone. After a playful spat and a narrow escape from Angia's snapping teeth, he promised a grand feast to celebrate their massive haul of blueprints and rare resources. Before dinner, Fang Hao opened his lord's book to construct a cellar. With a surge of magic, new stone stairs spiraled deep into the earth. He pushed the structure to level 5, transforming the single room into a sprawling, 5-room temperature-controlled basement. He directed the skeletons to move the wine barrels into the cool dark, securing his treasures beneath the floorboards. As the three sat down to eat, Fang Hao checked the regional chat only to find a storm brewing. A scammer named Lu Yan was peddling ordinary water as healing springs, sparking a vitriolic feud. Suddenly, a new power emerged, the Azure Dragon Mutual Aid Chamber of Commerce. They flooded the channel with messages, boldly declaring that Fang Hao's era was over and inviting others to join their new alliance. But their insults were cut short. A cold, mechanical system voice echoed in every lord's mind. A random event had begun, the Lord's Contest. Maps flickered to life, instantly revealing the hidden locations of every nearby territory. The hunt had officially started. The regional channel fell silent instantly. The latest system notification hung over the survivors like a public execution. In a world without laws, everyone is a competitor. And now, for the next 24 hours, every lord's location was visible on the map. The heated arguments that had defined the morning vanished. Enemies suddenly became brothers, trading rejuvenating springs and extra meat just to avoid a midnight raid. Fear, thick and suffocating, had taken hold. Fang Hao, however, remained calm. He opened his Book of Lords, watching as two markers pulsed on the parchment. To the east lay Zhang Bin, to the west a lord named Li Teng. Fang Hao felt no urge to strike first. Why would he? While these neighbors struggled to command 320 troops, Fang Hao sat upon a throne of tens of thousands. They simply weren't on the same level. Suddenly, his private messages exploded. Ping, ping, ping. Everyone was desperate for iron spears and leather armor. Sensing a golden opportunity, Fang Hao skipped his rest and went to work. He flooded the market with 30,000 sets of iron swords and equipment stripped from fallen gnolls. He wasn't just a lord anymore. He was the region's ultimate arms dealer. But to the west, Li Teng's eyes burned with a different fire. He stared at the map, his face twisted with a ruthless, calculated madness. He opened a private alliance channel, the Azure Dragon Chamber of Commerce. Fang Hao is near me, Li Teng typed, his fingers trembling with excitement. Support me and we take him out tomorrow. The alliance hesitated. They knew Fang Hao was powerful, but Li Teng had a secret. He shared an image of his latest recruitment, Tier 4 Greatsword Infantry. In a world of level 2 and 3 lords, Li Teng was the anomaly. The alliance's greed quickly outweighed their fear. They began pooling hundreds of soul crystals and thousands of units of iron, all for one goal: stripping Fang Hao of everything he owned. The next morning, Fang Hao woke and stretched, unaware of the conspiracy brewing in the west. But as he stepped out of his stone manor, he was met by a frantic Yi. Her face was pale, her voice shaking with pure terror. "Master," she cried, pointing toward the horizon. "Over there, look, a huge monster has appeared." At the skull conversion site, a gargantuan shadow looms. Fang Hao gazes up at the bone dragon, a skeletal titan standing 7 stories tall. Beside him, Yi trembles, her voice a mere whisper as she suggests calling for Miss Angia. Fang Hao gently pats her back. "It is all right," he reassures her. "These are our own." He approaches the beast. Even at rest, the dragon radiates a Tier 10 aura of pure oppression. Its passive skill, Dragon's Might, hangs heavy in the air, capable of shattering the morale of any living soul. This creature is now the crown jewel of Fang Hao's army, surpassing even the skeleton trolls. But Fang Hao sees more than a weapon, he sees a mount. Yet a problem remains. The gaps between the dragon's massive ribs are wide enough for a man to fall through. He needs a saddle, not just any saddle, but the mammoth-shaped armored troop transport saddle. With a flick of his wrist, Fang Hao opens the Book of Lords. He triggers a 100 times boost, and suddenly 101 massive saddles materialize on the dusty ground. He summons the blacksmith captain, Kulin, and a team of skeleton warriors to modify the gear. Soon the harness is secured. Fang Hao climbs into the lead seat of the 7-person transport, grips the reins, and commands the beast to soar. The takeoff is violent, a sudden surge of inertia that leaves him gasping. The wind howls, kneading his face like invisible hands, but then, stability. From the clouds, the world shrinks. He sees his laborers, the pigman village, and the vast expanse of his growing empire. He lets out a triumphant shout, only to swallow a mouthful of rushing air. After a dizzying landing, Fang Hao designates a resting area for his new guardian. His heart is light, the gloom of the Skullcrusher tribe finally lifting. With a Tier 10 dragon, he finally feels secure. But the peace is short-lived. While eating breakfast, a notification pings within the regional channel. A rival lord is posturing, sharing a photo of Tier 4 heavy sword infantry. The message is clear: "Get ready to die, Fang Hao, I am coming for you." The channel erupts in a toxic frenzy of cheers and insults. But as Fang Hao looks out at the towering dragon guarding his gates, he simply prepares for the coming storm. The regional chat channel was a toxic storm of vitriol. Li Teng, a man blinded by his own hubris, led the chorus of insults against Fang Hao. "Unscrupulous swindler," they hissed, their messages raining down like poison. Amidst the mockery, only Dong Jiayu dared to speak out, her voice a fragile shield against the screaming mob. Li Teng's response was cold and curt. "Fang Hao, you have a few hours left to live. After my army finishes breakfast, it will be your death day." Fang Hao watched the screen, his expression darkening into a mask of cold resolve. He didn't know this Li Teng, but he knew one thing: he was no fat sheep waiting for the slaughter. No need for that, Fang Hao typed, his fingers steady. I will come find you, and we shall see how you kill me. He wouldn't let this clown compromise his secrets. He wouldn't let him get close enough to see his skeleton army and post it to the world. After a quiet breakfast, Fang Hao marched to the skeleton conversion field. He looked at the requirements for a bone dragon, dragon crystals, star silver, and marks of death. He adjusted the recruitment to 1, and then the 100 times boost triggered. 101 massive bone dragons erupted into the sky, their skeletal wings blotting out the sun like a suffocating shroud. The ground shook as they landed outside the walls, sending the rabbit maids into a state of terror. Time was of the essence. Fang Hao summoned Fireblade, his loyal, soul-modified commander, and directed the blacksmiths to install troop transport saddles. Simultaneously, he crafted heavy iron armor for his skeleton trolls. Another massive boost meant over 1,000. And sets of iron helmets and heavy plates appeared in an instant, piles of metal glinting in the morning light. Within 10 minutes, the strike force was ready. 10 bone dragons, 68 armored skeleton trolls, and Fireblade stood at the ready. Fang Hao climbed onto the lead dragon's back, feeling the cold ridge of its spine beneath him. He would not wait for Li Teng to approach. He would take the initiative. With a low command, the dragons took flight, a dark, vengeful storm of bone and iron heading straight for Li Teng's throat. Li Teng sat cross-legged, casually picking his teeth with a wooden skewer. Around him, his army stirred. He felt invincible. With 64th-tier greatsword infantry and over 50 militiamen, he was certain Fang Hao stood no chance. "Everyone perk up," Li Teng shouted, spitting his skewer onto the dirt. "The enemy is just a bunch of insignificant punks. We go, we kill, we take the city. It is that simple, understand?" "Understood, my lord," the soldiers roared in unison. With a confident wave of his hand, Li Teng led his procession out of the city gates. The march began, but it did not last long. A soldier suddenly squinted at the horizon, his voice trembling as he pointed upward. "My lord, something is flying toward us, a swarm." Li Teng dismissed it as crows or eagles, until the sky began to darken. Huge skeletal wings blotted out the sun. Bone dragons, a terrifying legion of them, plummeted from the clouds with a sense of crushing oppression. High above, perched on the lead dragon's neck, Fang Hao looked down at the tiny human procession. He didn't need to ask who they were. He recognized the modern clothing of the man leading them. Fang Hao leaned forward and whispered, "Approach, dragon breath." A deafening roar shattered the air. Streams of death energy swept across the ground, melting flesh from bone in an instant. Li Teng's elite 4th-tier units, the pride of his army, were reduced to charred skeletons before they could even draw their blades. It was a massacre, a slaughter with no suspense. Li Teng scrambled backward, tripping over his own feet in a blind panic. He turned and bolted toward his territory, fleeing like a coward, while his men screamed behind him. But there was no escape. The dragons hovered over Li Teng's city like omens of doom. Massive skeletal trolls leaped from the sky, crashing into the streets like heavy stones. Fireblade, a skeleton warrior clad in blood-red armor, leaped down and raised a long, jagged blade. "Kill those who resist," he commanded, his voice echoing with malice. "Capture the enemy lord alive." Minutes later, Fang Hao strolled into the manor. Li Teng was dragged across the floor like a broken toy, his face a mask of tears and snot. He looked up, expecting a monster, but found a human smiling back at him. "You're Fang Hao," Li Teng stammered, his body shaking uncontrollably. "This is a joke, right? Please, I was just joking." He slammed his forehead against the floor, begging for mercy, kowtowing until his skin bruised. Fang Hao ignored the pleas and opened his Book of Lords. The regional chat was still buzzing with messages, mocking Fang Hao and cheering for Li Teng's victory. Fang Hao looked at the pathetic man on the floor and sighed. "Fireblade," Fang Hao said softly, his voice cold and final. "Make the knife fast, he is, after all, a fellow villager." Upon hearing Fang Hao's cold command, Hugh Ren drew the long blade from his waist. Li Teng collapsed in absolute terror, a dark puddle spreading from his crotch across the dirt. "Fang Hao, please, please don't kill me," he shrieked, dragging his muddy trousers forward in a desperate crawl. "I was wrong, just let me go this one time, please." Puff. In a singular, blurred motion, the cold light of the fire blade flashed. Li Teng's world spun violently as his head was severed from his shoulders. His eyes filled with a final, lingering confusion before his skull rolled to a stop at Fang Hao's feet. Fang Hao sighed softly. He had no desire to be a bully, yet this was the third life he had taken. He opened the Book of Lords and used the photo function to capture the gruesome scene, the bright red blood and the headless corpse. He uploaded the images directly to the regional channel. The chat instantly fell into a deathly silence. No censorship, no restrictions, just the cold reality of Li Teng's demise. Li Teng is dead, Fang Hao's message lingered on the screen. As for any others who are hostile to me, feel free to challenge me. The reaction was immediate. Those who had previously insulted Fang Hao fell silent, while others began calling him Big Boss with newfound reverence. Suddenly, a brief message appeared. The Qinglong Mutual Aid Chamber of Commerce is permanently dissolved. The members were terrified that Fang Hao would track their locations and wipe them out next. Fang Hao ignored the grove. Elling and blacklisted the agitators. We will settle those scores later, he muttered. Hugh Ren approached, handing over the victim's Book of Lords. As Fang Hao touched it, a notification appeared, "Can devour Lord's book." The book transformed into specks of starlight, merging into his own. His Book of Lords reached level 2, granting a marching speed increase of 1%, resource gathering of 2%, and 10 additional daily chat uses. He looked at the prompt, occupy or abandon. Occupy, Fang Hao decided firmly. By claiming the territory, he gained ownership of the manor, the walls, and several new blueprints, including agricultural trucks and heavy sword infantry grounds. More importantly, he discovered vast warehouses of wheat and potatoes. My lord, Hugh Ren interrupted, there are human farmers remaining, shall we kill them? Bring them to me, Fang Hao commanded. 32 farmers were led in by a phalanx of skeletons. They huddled together, trembling violently at the sight of Li Teng's body. I am Fang Hao, he announced, his voice echoing. From today I am your master. Answer me well and you live. What lies in the land surrounding this city? After a heavy, suffocating silence, one man knelt, his voice shaking. Sir, I come from the west. There are many, many human villages to the west. Fang Hao stood amidst the dust of his newly conquered territory, listening to the weary villagers. To the west, human settlements lived in constant fear of bandit raids, a cycle of violence that birthed a desperate class of migrants. Fang Hao looked upon the fearful faces below him. He did not want to be a villain. Listen well, he projected his voice firmly. This war was not my choice, but the folly of your previous lord. From this day on, I am your master, and in exchange for your loyalty, I offer food and shelter. The silence was heavy until one farmer knelt and the rest followed like a falling wave. To ease their terror of his undead nature, Fang Hao performed a clever ruse. Casting a spell, he summoned 2 wooden spirit servants. The villagers whispered in awe, a human mage they could understand, a necromancer they could not. With the people pacified, the work began. Fang Hao moved with purpose, rebuilding the walls with arrow towers and erecting logging camps, quarries, and a vital mill. But a territory needs more than stone. It needs steel. At the infantry training ground, Fang Hao spent 12 soul crystals. In a flash of blinding light, his 100 times boost triggered, transforming 3 recruits into 303 burly Tier 4 heavy sword infantry. These men were giants, bronze-skinned and muscled like statues. Fang Hao opened his Book of Lords, crafting 303 greatswords and sets of gleaming plate armor. Your mission is simple, he commanded the ironclad line. Guard this land, protect the innocent, and strike down any who attempt to desert. Leaving the hero Fire Blade to oversee the transition, Fang Hao mounted his bone dragon, soaring through the clouds. A journey that once took hours was over in a mere 20 minutes. As the dragon's massive feet touched his home soil, Nelson emerged from the Organ Museum. Beside the scholar stood a new, terrifying silhouette, a skeleton hero with the fangs and massive, leathery wings of a vampire. Good afternoon, scholar, Fang Hao greeted him warmly. Nelson stepped aside, revealing the transformed creature. Lord, meet the Blood Hunter. The winged skeleton bowed low, his voice a raspy echo. Blood Hunter, at your service, your lordship. Blood Hunter stood before his new master, hollow skeleton whose fangs gleamed with a predatory sharpness, no longer hidden by lips. Fang Hao smiled, welcoming the Tier 5 hero to his ranks. Though the Blood Hunter was a modified undead, unable to ever level up or advance, his loyalty had reached a perfect 100%. He was a master of the air, a commander of shadows. With a powerful snap of his enormous bat wings, the hero took flight to lead the bone dragons and skeleton bats, leaving Fang Hao to contemplate his next move. Inside the Lord's mansion, Fang Hao sat with Nelson, the air heavy with the weight of expansion. They discussed the newly captured human city to the west. Fang Hao suggested appointing a member of the Gentle Rabbit clan as the new city lord, but Nelson shook his head. Humans struggle to accept the rule of the dead, the old lick cautioned, and the rabbit folk lack the worldly experience to manage such a sprawling prize. Fang Hao sighed, realizing the burden of leadership still rested solely on his shoulders. The decision would have to wait. As night draped over the territory, the system interface flickered with a cold, blue light. The Lord's Siege event was officially over. The map-marking functionality vanished into the digital void. In its place, the Aliank E-system and photo function went live. Fang Hao scrolled through the regional chat, watching as 25-year-old models and 180-centimeter-tall men posted photos to sell their services in exchange for resources. A strange, desperate new era had begun. Far away in the Coldwind Mountains, the atmosphere was far more grim. Inside the skull-shattering tribe's great hall, a chandelier made of human skulls swayed in a ghostly breeze. Xiaoyu the ghost, huddled within the possessed, scarred body of the Knoll Nigo. She stood before Thrall, the burly orc chieftain, whose eyes burned with demonic blood. Mimicking the Knoll's raspy, resentful voice, she cried out for vengeance against the undead. Thrall leaned back, his voice a low rumble. "Tomorrow," he declared, "you shall march with the army to reclaim your honor." As the possessed Knoll was led to the barracks, Xiaoyu waited for the deep silence of midnight. Then her spectral form detached from the flesh, slipping into the shadows to uncover the chieftain's secret plans. The early morning light filtered into the room as Fang Hao sat up, rubbing his blurry eyes. On the bedside table, the communication stone pulsed with a silent, one-way message from Xiaoyu. He held the cold stone to his ear, listening intently. His expression shifted from groggy to grim. The report was brief but dire. The enemy army had mobilized at dawn, led not by the infamous Skullbreaker but by a hero named Amari. They would reach the territory within 48 hours. Even worse, the legendary bronze bull Talok had joined the coalition. Fang Hao felt a cold knot of tension tighten in his chest. He descended the stairs, greeting Yi as she prepared breakfast. "Make it simple, Yi," he directed, his voice heavy with purpose. "And wake Angia, we have work to do." Outside near the Organs Museum, Fang Hao met the scholar Nelson and the Bloodhunter. "The Shattered Skull tribe is moving," Fang Hao announced. His orders were immediate. "Bloodhunter, prepare the bone dragons and the skeleton trolls. We set off shortly." As the Bloodhunter took flight on fleshy wings, Fang Hao turned to the ancient Lick. "Scholar Nelson, you must come as well. The enemy leader is a purple-tier hero. I will not risk the Bloodhunter facing her alone." Returning to the manor, he found Angia staggering downstairs, her clothes disheveled and her mood sour until he mentioned the fight. When he revealed their target was the bronze bull, she literally spat out her soup. In this region, Talok was a legend, a pillar of orcish prestige. Fang Hao's gaze remained steely. If the bull would not join his ranks as a living ally, he would serve as a purple-tier skeleton. Angia's shock quickly vanished, replaced by a predatory grin. "Fine," she shrugged. "But I want his horns for my wall." The strategy was set. Angia would lead 50,000 infantry toward the rendezvous point, while Fang Hao took to the sky. Miles away in a separate territory, a man named Zhang Bin was butchering a unicorn, his hands shaking from a night of terrors. He lived in fear of Fang Hao, haunted by dreams of his own execution. Suddenly, the sun vanished. The sky turned a bruised, skeletal gray as 101 bone dragons descended, their massive claws crushing the stone of the city walls. Fang Hao dismounted, stepping toward the trembling man with a calm, terrifying smile, but the sight of the undead armada was too much. Zhang Bin's legs buckled and he collapsed into the dirt, sobbing for mercy. Zhang Bin knelt on the cold ground, his face a mask of deathly pallor. The gruesome memory of Li Teng's execution flashed through his mind, a constant, bloody loop that made his legs tremble and his mind go blank. Fang Hao frowned at the pathetic sight. "Who wants to kill you? Get up and talk." Inside the Lord's Hall, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken power. Zhang Bin nervously wiped the dust off his own throne, offering it to Fang Hao with shaking hands. Fang Hao sat, his gaze piercing. "Tomorrow, or perhaps the day after, I will be at war with a massive orc tribe to the east. Their forces exceed 10,000, and your territory is caught right in the middle." Zhang Bin's heart tightened. He wasn't stupid, he understood the subtext. To survive, he had to surrender. He slowly reached out and handed over his Book of Lords. "We're from the same hometown," Zhang Bin whispered. "We can only survive if we stick together." Fang Hao smiled and accepted the book. As he devoured its power, a surge of energy rippled through the hall. His own Book of Lords reached level 3. Instantly, his marching speed increased by 2%, resource gathering by 3%, and he unlocked a new blueprint, the human hunting hut. But Fang Hao wasn't finished. "You and your small force are no match for orcs," he stated. "So here is the plan. You will take your men to Li Teng's old territory. It is a level 4 city with 300 elite troops. You will be its city lord." Zhang Bin gasped. The terror that had gripped him for days evaporated, replaced by a surge of pure joy. From the brink of death to the master of a level 4 city, it was a dizzying reversal of fortune. Moments later, Zhang Bin and his 42 followers were hoisted into the air by a massive, terrifying bone dragon. As they spiraled into the clouds amid screams of fright, Zhang Bin looked down, seeing Fang Hao's skeleton army stretched out across the plains like a pale, lethal snake. With the territory secured, Fang Hao began his final preparations. He upgraded the walls to level 5 and erected towering magic defense structures. He would not let the war reach his own home. He would meet the enemy on his own terms. Anya arrived shortly after, leading tens of thousands of skeleton soldiers. Their armor clattered like a rhythmic, macabre drumbeat. Fang Hao's eyes sharpened as he looked toward the horizon. "Everyone get ready," he commanded, his voice cold and steady. "We are heading to Manhwa Market." In the shadows of the mansion, a ghostly blue soul flame ignited in the eyes of a skeleton warrior. The march had begun. Manhwa Market, once a bustling hub of orcish trade, now stands eerily deserted. Outside the city walls, a massive army of orcs waits in the shadows. They have gathered from many tribes for one dark purpose: to destroy the necromantic stronghold rising to the west. Inside the chief's hall, the bronze bull, Tylok, huddles with several tribal leaders. He speaks in a low, heavy voice. "The Skullcrusher tribe arrives tomorrow, then we march together." The chiefs murmur with a mix of greed and growing dread. They wonder, what is this undead city? Why has it grown so fast? Tylok taps his armrest nervously. He knows that if they do not strike now, the nearby tribes will be consumed. Suddenly, a Minotaur guard bursts through the heavy doors, his voice a panicked roar. "Chieftain, something terrible has happened. Tens of thousands of undead troops and bone dragons are at the city gates." Tylok stands instantly, his face pale with shock. He grabs his battle axe and sprints to the city walls with the other flustered leaders. As they reach the ramparts, their hearts sink. On the horizon, a surging tsunami of white bone approaches. This is no mere city. It is an empire of death. Chaos erupts as the orcish tribes scramble to bring their soldiers inside the gates before the tide reaches them. Far across the field, sitting atop a cart pulled by a skull wolf, Fang Hao watches the panic unfold. Beside him sits the Lick Nelson and a snoring Angia. The blood hunter folds his wings and lands nearby, reporting that the orcs are retreating behind their walls. Fang Hao reaches out and slaps Angia's cheek, wiping away a smear of saliva. "Wake up," he commands. "The fight is starting." Angia rubs her eyes, suddenly eager for blood. Fang Hao stands and sounds the war horn. A blue ripple washes over his army, granting a plus 10% movement speed and a plus 2% attack bonus. 50,000 skeletons draw their rusted blades and begin a rhythmic, terrifying run toward the city. On the walls, Tylok screams for order, shoving aside bickering chiefs. "Get the ranged units up, bring stones, bring logs." But it is too late. The sky turns black as dozens of Tier 10 bone dragons swoop from the clouds. They unleash their death breath, a searing beam of dark energy. The orcs scream as their flesh melts away, leaving nothing but scorched bone behind. The massacre of Manhwa has begun. The mighty orcs were as vulnerable as ants, huddled in the shadows to escape the searing breath of the bone dragons. Those who failed to find shelter had long since vanished, leaving behind only scorched piles of bone. The city gates groaned open as a skeleton troll welcomed the Undead Army into the heart of the city. Fang Hao, controlling a skeleton from afar, strode through the gates with a cold, rhythmic clack. "Cease the attack," Fang Hao commanded. Thump, 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 the massive bone dragons ceased their circling and landed heavily upon the rooftops, making the very foundations of the city tremble. Fang Hao stopped before the chieftain's hall and raised his voice. "Bronze Bull, an old friend has arrived. Why don't you come out and have a chat? Perhaps this war can be avoided." Inside the hall, the orc leaders looked at Chief Tylok, the Bronze Bull, in desperate silence. "Talk to him," one chieftain whispered. "Save our people." The Bronze Bull set down his weapon and stepped into the light. At Fang Hao's signal, a skeleton kicked open a nearby tavern door and dragged out 2 chairs. Fang Hao sat first, gesturing for the orc to do the same. "Do you recognize me?" the skeleton asked calmly. "I am Fang Hao, Chief Tylok. You really have a bad memory." The Bronze Zeebul's expression shifted from defiance to pure shock. This was the man he had traded with, a business partner, now an invader. Fang Hao didn't waste time on pleasantries. He spoke of the approaching Skullcrusher tribe and the futility of resistance. "It is simple," Fang Hao stated, leaning back. "Either surrender or die. Sign a hero's contract and I will spare your people." "My lord, we surrender," an orc chieftain shouted from the distance, but Fang Hao's eyes remained fixed on the bull. "I will give you 1 minute to consider," Fang Hao said, but after only a few heartbeats he broke the silence. "Time is up. What is your choice?" With a heavy fist slammed against the chair, the bronze bull growled, "Fine, I will sign, but you must guarantee the safety of my people." As the contract bound them together, Fang Hao turned to his companion Angia. "Take your men," he ordered. "Find all the money." Angia's eyes lit up with greed as she vanished into the hall. In the square, 5,000 orcs stood disarmed and trembling. When one merchant chieftain begged to be released, Fang Hao's voice turned to ice. "The defeated become slaves. That is the orc way, is it not?" "But you said you would release us," the chieftain stammered. Fang Hao frowned. "I said I would not kill you. Why are you the one who talks so much?" The dust of battle settled over the Manhwa market as the defeated orcs were shackled under heavy guard. Fang Hao had promised them mercy, but mercy came with a price, a lifetime of labor to atone for their defiance. Anya soon emerged from the market's depths, followed by skeletons lugging heavy iron-bound chests. Inside, a fortune glittered, the accumulated wealth of the charging bull's years of trade. Fang Hao's eyes widened as the Lord's Book tallied the haul. *271,455 war coins, and *355,451 beast head gold pieces. Bronze Bull Tylok approached, his face a mask of stoic resignation. He was no longer a chieftain, but a vassal. "Lord Fang Hao," he rumbled, offering his respect. Fang Hao nodded, decreeing that the elderly and young of the Minotaur clan would remain to guard the market, while the able-bodied would march to the new territory. Deactivating his divine state, Fang Hao returned to his physical body and opened his messages. Zhang Bin, now calling himself a loyal subordinate, reported that he and the hero Fireblade had successfully reached their assigned city. With a chime, the Lord's Book confirmed the conquest. Manhwa Market was now an official annex. Along with the territory came a new blueprint, the tavern, a place for gathering intelligence and maps, though Fang Hao wondered what secrets a city of the dead could possibly whisper. Soon, the marching column arrived at the city gates. Fang Hao stepped forward to meet the massive Minotaur. He unfurled a rare, purple hero contract, a scroll that would determine Tylok's soul. Without a moment's hesitation, the bronze bull pricked his finger and pressed a crimson print onto the parchment. A beam of light surged, binding Tylok to Fang Hao's will. The Lord's Book flickered, displaying the warrior's formidable stats. A level 5 purple tier hero with 65% loyalty, Tylok possessed legendary skills like Beast God's Wrath * and the passive * Copper Skin and Iron Bones ***. "Tylok, you are now in charge of the prisoners," Fang Hao commanded. "Ensure no one escapes." Finally, Fang Hao turned to the Blood Hunter. "Command the Bone Dragon, gather the fallen orcs and cast them into the conversion fields. We return to the main city. Now." After a 20-minute journey, Fang Hao stepped into the main city with a single driving purpose: expansion. He marched straight to the barracks, his eyes scanning the inventory. He possessed 16,978 writhing spines, more than enough to summon a tide of death. At the skeleton conversion field, the air grew cold as he began his work. Using 72 bloodstones, he initiated the recruitment of Tier 3 skeleton bats. Suddenly, the 100-fold boost roared to life, transforming a small flight into 7,272 winged terrors. Next, he sacrificed 3 rare troll stones, conjuring 303 skeletal giants that loomed like monuments over the territory. The ground trembled as the Blood Hunter returned, dragging a mountain of orc remains. From this heap of bone, a new unit emerged, the Tier 4 skeleton Minotaur. Fang Hao spent 212 beast tooth stones and watched in awe as 21,412 horned behemoths materialized, their empty sockets glowing with unholy light. But he was far from finished. Using his remaining spines, he summoned a true apocalypse. The boost flashed incessantly, manifesting 101,000 necromancers, nearly 15,000 skeleton riders, and a crushing wave of 606,000 warriors and spearmen. Outside the gates, a literal sea of white bone awaited his command. After mass-producing iron gear to outfit every soldier, Fang Hao left 50,000 guards behind and led his main force toward the secondary city. The journey was surprisingly peaceful. Fang Hao reclined on a carriage, his head resting against the soft, smooth thighs of his maid, Yer, while a gentle rabbit girl fed him fresh fruit. He idly browsed the Book of Lords, watching other survivors boast or complain about their slow progress. He smiled at their petty squabbles until the atmosphere shifted. A cold, systemic chime echoed in his mind. Congratulations, you have survived for 20 days. The silence that followed was heavy. The mandatory mission had arrived, and Fang Hao's massive army was the only thing standing between him and the unknown. Fang Hao had been so consumed by the threat of the Skullcrusher tribe that he nearly forgot the mandatory 7th-day mission. Suddenly, the system notification chimed in his mind. Congratulations, the cold voice echoed. You have survived for 20 days. The initial quest, a demon rat invasion, loomed with threats of disease and rotting food. But then the prompt flickered and changed. Due to Fang Hao's unique circumstances, the mission mutated into something far more personal. Skullbreaker Hammer. The system announced that a massive army of 300,000 orcs was now marching toward his territory. Their speed increased by 35% and their attack power bolstered by 10%. Holy crap, Fang Hao hissed, his heart hammering against his ribs. In a fit of white-hot anxiety, he accidentally slapped the thigh of the rabbit girl sitting beside him. She let out a startled cry, her eyes wide with shock. Fang Hao stammered an apology, staring at the bright red handprint he'd left on her fair skin. The rabbit girl blushed, whispering shyly that she didn't mind. But the awkwardness was quickly cut short by the Book of Lords. The regional chat was exploding. Lords were desperate for weapons and armor, tagging Fang Hao with newfound respect after his victory over Li Teng. Fang Hao felt a surge of responsibility. He replied to the masses, urging them to hold the line. "This is the last mandatory mission," he wrote solemnly. "Everyone, do your best to survive." His words sparked a rare wave of unity, as lords promised to light beacons and send reinforcements to one another. Meanwhile, miles away in the dark, the Skullcrusher army settled into a cacophony of snores and the smell of stewing meat. Commander Amiri, clad in silver beast armor, studied his maps. He dreamed of the glory he would win once he crushed the city of the dead. But his ambition was interrupted by frantic footsteps. A soldier burst in, gasping that a Knoll hero had been found dead in his tent. Amiri rushed to the scene and recoiled. The corpse was unrecognizable, its hair had fallen out and its skin was a swollen, grayish-blue, looking as if it had been rotting for days. Amiri stared at the grotesque remains, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "Since we cannot guess how he died," he muttered, "let him tell us himself." The northwest corner of the orc camp was a nightmare of filth and decay. Amidst the overwhelming stench and swarming mosquitoes, several massive iron cages held the broken remnants of humanity. 2 orc guards approached, their eyes cold. Guan Chi, a human overseer who groveled before his captors, scrambled to his feet with a fawning, obsequious smile. The orcs looked at him with pure disdain. To them, he was merely a tool to keep the other slaves in line. "The commander needs 3 sacrifices," one orc rumbled. "Choose those who are too weak to work." A panic commotion erupted inside the cages. Guan Chi, eager to prove his worth, struck the iron bars with a wooden stick *clang*, the piercing sound echoing through the camp. He pointed out a man named Qi Ming and 2 others. Qi Ming begged for mercy, invoking their shared home city, but Guan Chi only sneered. He falsely accused them of slacking off to please his masters. The orcs didn't care for the drama. They dragged the 3 men out, ruthlessly broke their limbs, and hauled them away like carcasses. Left alone, Guan Chi glanced at his Book of Lords, muttering a bitter oath against the legendary leader Fang Hao. He believed that once he fully allied with the orcs, he would be the one to rule the region. At the center of the camp, Commander Amiri stood over the corpse of a Knoll. As the orcs slit the throats of the 3 sacrifices, blood flowed into a dark magic circle, fueling a gruesome resurrection. The Knoll's body bloomed with a sickly, rosy hue as it sat up, its eyes darting in terror. "You are dead, Ami," Rai stated calmly. "Tell me, what did you see before the end?" The Knoll gasped out a warning of a human who controlled the undead, a man who had conquered his village with a ghostly army. Then *bang*, the Knoll's body exploded into a spray of gore. Amiri remained unfazed, wiping blood from his face. He scoffed at the threat. His force of 300,000 orcs was far superior to Fang Hao's 50,000 low-level skeletons. He was certain the humans would flee in terror before the sun reached its zenith. The next morning, a sliver of pale light crested the horizon. Fang Hao was jolted awake not by his maid, but by a transparent soul floating beside his bed. Holy crap, he gasped, nearly lunging for a weapon before realizing it was Xiao Yu, his ghost spy. My lord, she whispered urgently, I have the intelligence you require. Fang Hao opened his map as Xiao Yu traced the orcs' path. She detailed their numbers and their commander, Amiri, a seasoned blue-tier hero. Fang Hao stared at the route, a cold, calculated smile spreading across his face. They're waiting to rendezvous with the rest of their army, Fang Hao muttered, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous tone. We won't wait for them to arrive, we're going to find them first. Xiao Yu stood tense, her voice tight with concern. The orc army is nearing 350,000, she warned. And if this hero, this bronze bull, joins them, their power will be unstoppable. Fang Hao adjusted his final piece of protective gear, his expression unreadable. There is no need to worry, Xiao Yu. I defeated the bronze bull's army yesterday. He has already signed a hero's contract. He belongs to me now. So fast, Xiao Yu whispered, her mind racing. It had been only 1 day since she sent the warning. Fang Hao didn't wait for her to recover. Let's go downstairs. In the hallway, Irene and the rabbit girl maids, led by Year, bowed low as they prepared breakfast. Fang Hao gave a sharp nod. Year, call the senior executives to the council chamber, immediately. 5 minutes later, the hall was filled with the heavy presence of heroes. Nelson, Fireblade, Anya, and the newly loyal bronze bull sat in silence. Fang Hao handed a sound transmission conch to the blood hunter. The Skull Shatterer tribe is assembling nearby. Scout them and report back instantly. As the blood hunter vanished, Fang Hao turned to the map. Nelson, you will command all mage units. Fireblade and Anya, you share the burden of the infantry, nearly 700,000 skeleton warriors and spearmen. Bronze Bull, you lead the orcs and skeleton minotaurs. Blood Hunter, the skies are yours. The orders were final. No tactics were needed yet, only the raw, overwhelming power of their specialized legions. Soon, the march began. Fang Hao initiated his divine descent, his consciousness sliding into a skeleton warrior as the massive army surged forward. They would catch the orcs off guard, striking before the enemy even knew the bronze bull had turned. Suddenly, a system notification chimed in Fang Hao's mind. The mandatory quest, Demon Rat Invasion, has officially begun. But a second prompt followed. Your task is a changed task. The situation will unfold on its own. Miles away in the heart of the orc camp, Commander Amiri slammed a fist into a wooden chair, splintering it to pieces. Where is the bronze bull? She roared. We cannot wait, prepare to depart. But as the guards turned to obey, the ground began to shudder. A glass of water on Amiri's table rippled, then danced. Amiri stepped out of her tent and froze. The horizon was no longer green. A white tsunami of bone was sweeping across the fields, hundreds of thousands of skeletons marching in terrifying, rhythmic silence. Above them, the massive wings of bone dragons blotted out the morning sun. Sound the horns, Amiri shrieked, her voice cracking with sudden terror. Prepare for battle. A piercing howl shattered the air, and 300,000 orcs snapped into a desperate battle readiness. Amiri suppressed the rising dread in her chest, barking orders to reinforce the perimeter with whatever scrap they could find. High above, the sky darkened as the bone dragons drew closer. All bat riders, Amiri screamed, her voice straining against the wind, lure those monsters away. Ranged units, prepare to fire. Thousands of Tier 5 bat riders soared into the sky, javelins at the ready. They were meant to harass, to distract, but reality was far more cruel. As they closed in, thousands of giant skeletal bats erupted from the backs of the bone dragons like a plague of locusts. The sky began to rain white bone as the orc riders were stripped of their flesh in midair. Then the dragons opened their maws, spewing dark beams of deathly breath that turned entire orc platoons into wailing skeletons. Damn it, Amiri cursed, her eyes wild. Warriors/T. Rough these undead, take their commander's head. The orc infantry let out a bloodthirsty roar, their eyes turning a frenzied crimson as they charged, but the undead were waiting. 100,000 necromancers unleashed a volley of black missiles, the negative energy exploding through the orc ranks. When the two armies finally collided, bang, the sound was deafening. Orcs slammed into the skeletal shield wall, impaling themselves on iron spears just to break the line. To the right, a silent orc girl led a fresh legion of undead down from the rocky heights, crushing the orc flank. Fang Hao watched the carnage from the rear, his expression cold. Talok, he whispered, end this quickly. The massive bronze bull nodded. With a deafening snort, Talok initiated his berserk charge. He and his Minotaur warriors became a speeding train of destruction, smashing through the orc center. With each use of the beast god's wrath, the ground trembled, and the orc morale finally shattered. As dusk settled, the screams faded into a heavy, suffocating silence. Fireblade approached Fang Hao, stepping over a sea of severed limbs. "My lord, it is finished. We found humans at the rear, all dead." Fang Hao followed him to find 6 beheaded lords. He knelt, picking up a blood-stained volume from the dirt. The Lord's Book, Tier 3, belonging to Guan Qi. Fang Hao stared at the book. This man had devoured the power of other lords to reach such a high level, only to end up a nameless corpse in the mud. The mandatory mission had turned the territory into a silent ghost town, a haunting reminder of the orcs' cruelty. Fang Hao looked down at the villagers' remains, choosing to grant them a proper burial rather than converting them into mindless skeletons. "Bury them nearby," he murmured, his voice heavy with a rare somberness. "I hope when you wake up, it was just a dream." While the villagers were laid to rest, the fallen orcs served a different purpose. Skeleton soldiers moved with mechanical precision, collecting weapons, equipment, and intact limbs, loading them onto carts bound for the main city. Fireblade gestured toward a richly dressed corpse. "My lord," judging from his attire, this man was their commander. Fang Hao nodded slowly. "Let Scholar Nelson identify him and transform him into a skeleton hero. Now, let us collect the loot and head back." The army marched, a grim procession of carts dripping fresh, dark brown blood onto the dusty road. Back at the main territory, Fang Hao dispelled his divine presence and woke in his own bed. He stepped into the hall to find Yer and the rabbit maids waiting, their faces glowing with relief. Though they offered a lavish dinner, Fang Hao declined. A true celebration would wait until they reached the main city. The spoils of war were staggering. Fang Hao looked at the tally, 115,782 wriggling spines. He then took the captured Lord's Book from Fireblade. As he touched it, the book dissolved into golden light, merging with his own. His territory reached level 4, increasing his marching speed by 3%, his resource gathering by 4%, and granting him 30 additional daily messages. Later, in the quiet of the hall, the bronze bull Talok approached, his body wrapped in bandages. "Sir," he grunted, "you've dealt the skull-shattering tribe a blow they cannot easily recover from." Fang Hao leaned back, deep in thought. They had annihilated 300,000 enemies, but the war was far from over. "You believe they won't attack again soon?" "They are in a panic, my lord," Talok replied firmly. "To lose 300,000 soldiers without a single survivor, it will spark internal strife." Fang Hao rubbed his temples. He had the numbers, an army of nearly 800,000 undead, but he lacked something more vital. "We need information on the Cold Wind Mountains," he mused. "We cannot strike blindly. We must know our enemy before we finish them." Before launching an attack, one must possess the truth. In the shadows of the Frostwind Mountains, Fang Hao knew that gold often spoke louder than scouts. He turned to the bronze bull, commanding him to use his prestige to bribe the local orcs for any unimportant secrets regarding the Skullcrusher tribe. "Don't worry about the cost," Fang Hao declared, his eyes fixed on the future. He ordered the bronze bull to continue operating the Manhwa market, ensuring it remained a vital artery of profit for the territory. As for the captured tribal chiefs, their lives would be spared, but only if they signed slave contracts, binding their people to Fang Hao as affiliated villages. With the plan set, Fang Hao prepared to depart. He left the fierce Fireblade in command of 100,000 undead soldiers to hold the city. Then, he took to the skies. When the Bone Dragon finally touched down at the main city, the Bebit tribe maid stumbled off its skeletal back, their faces deathly pale. Yer knelt on the dirt, trembling from the high-altitude flight. Fang Hao reached out, his voice softened by concern. "Yer, are you all right?" "It is just the height, master," she managed to gasp, her heart still racing. Nearby, the tireless bachelor Nelson bowed. He carried the fresh corpse of an orc hero, his mind already calculating the ritual to transform it into a skeletal powerhouse. "I am willing to share your burdens, sir," Nelson murmured, before retreating into the shadows of the Organ Museum to begin his grim work. Left to his own devices, Fang Hao turned toward the undead construction zone. With a wave of his hand, he manifested a level 1 target range, then immediately poured resources into it, upgrading the structure to level 3. He moved to recruit a single unit, but as the summoning light flared, his 100-fold boost triggered. Suddenly, 101 skeleton archers stood before him. They were Tier 2 warriors, distinct from the mindless thralls with ribbons tied around their hollow brows. Fang Hao realized their true value. They were not bound to a single weapon. They could wield bows, crossbows, or even muskets with equal lethality. To the towers, Fang Hao commanded. As the archers marched to their posts, a golden system prompt flickered in the twilight. The Skullbreaker hammer quest was complete. He had earned 100 war coins and a surge of influence across the lands. The forced tasks were over, and a new, unpredictable era had begun. Mandatory tasks are like a funnel, constantly filtering out those who are not suited for this brutal world. Fang Hao mused on this as the system announced the end of the mandatory era. Now it was time for his rewards. First, he examined a purple-grade blueprint, the Tower of the Dead. It was designed to increase the range of his divine mandate ability. Fang Hao felt a flicker of disappointment. He had hoped for a weapon of mass destruction or a powerful new unit. Instead, he received what amounted to a signal tower for his consciousness. While useful for possessing distant troops without traveling to them, it required 30 shadow stones to build, a resource he lacked entirely. But his frustration evaporated when he saw the second reward, an orange-tier blueprint called the Trial Grounds of Merit. This special building offered two incredible functions, hero assessment and hero advancement. For the price of 1 hero's heart and 100 war coins, a tier 10 unit could attempt to become a hero. For 500 war coins, an existing hero could undergo trials to advance their rank. "This is outrageous," Fang Hao muttered, eyeing the exorbitant fees. "It's like paying for a postgraduate exam with no guarantee of passing." Despite his grumbling, he immediately began construction in an open space near the statues. For 20 minutes, a brilliant orange light bathed the territory, drawing every eye until a majestic altar stood complete. The system chimed. Lick Nelson's loyalty rose to 85, and the battle-hardened Angia's loyalty climbed to 87. Even the presence of such a building promised them a future of growth. "Master, dinner is ready," Yer called out softly, her large eyes reflecting the glow of the new altar. Fang Hao smiled, leaving his work behind. They sat down to a lavish meal, lavish by their standards, sharing a quiet moment of victory. But as they ate, Fang Hao opened the Book of Lords to check the regional channel. The chat was a storm of emotions. Many celebrated their survival, believing the hard times were over, but others were more cautious. They warned that the end of mandatory tasks only signaled the beginning of random events like the terrifying Lord's War. The safety of the single-player experience was gone. Now, it was Lord against Lord. As the channel fell into an uneasy silence, private messages began to flood in. The battle was over, but the healing had just begun, and everyone was desperate to buy Fang Hao's spring water. The morning sun had just begun to touch the horizon when Fang Hao received word from Yer. The skeleton merchant Ruhr was already waiting at the market. Fang Hao knew what this meant. To expand his trade, he needed to join the Tianyan Chamber of Commerce, a feat impossible without a recommendation from a veteran member. Ruhr had petitioned the legendary King of Bones, Audis, on Fang Hao's behalf, and today the verdict would be delivered. Fang Hao arrived at the market to find the skeletal merchant sitting in eerie stillness. For the dead, time is a meaningless river. Ruhr stood and bowed stiffly. "Good morning, my lord," he rasped. "I have word from Lord Audis regarding your recommendation." Fang Hao's heart hammered against his ribs. "And what does the King of Bones say?" "He has agreed," Ruhr replied, his grip tightening on Is Kane, but his support is not free. He demands 20% of your profits for the next 200 years. Fang Hao froze. 200 years to an undead king, that was a blink of an eye, but to a human it was an eternity. Fortunately, Ruhr offered an alternative, a flat payment of 10,000 war coins. Without hesitation, Fang Hao chose the coins. He couldn't gamble with 2 centuries of his future. He signaled a nearby rabbitwoman maid. "Tell Yer to prepare 10,000 war coins and bring them here immediately." Moments later, Yer arrived with 2 skeletons lugging heavy, clinking chests. As the lids creaked open to reveal the shimmering hoard, the soul fire in Ruhr's eyes flickered with genuine surprise. This young territory was far wealthier than he had imagined. "We depart in 20 minutes, Fang Hao declared. He gathered his strength, summoning Angia to act as his bodyguard, while his other heroes, Fireblade, Nelson, and the Blood Hunter, tended to the defenses and the laboratories. The feisty Angia would accompany him into the unknown. Ruhr unfurled a teleportation scroll and a pale blue light screen tore through the air. "After you," the merchant gestured. Fang Hao and Angia stepped into the shimmering void. A dizzying, distorted sensation washed over them, and then the world snapped back into focus. They stood in Tianyan Business Alliance Base number 032. The site was jarring, smooth stone roads, lush flower beds, and modern streetlights powered by glowing stones. It looked almost like Earth. "Welcome," Ruhr whispered, leading them toward a massive central spire. let us finish the formalities. Your new life as a merchant prince begins now. The air was thick with the scent of a dozen different species. Humans, orcs, and the shuffling undead moved together through the streets without a second glance. In a dark alleyway nearby, a tiny fairy with dragonfly wings kissed a massive, burly orc. Fang Hao watched, mesmerized by the display, until Ruor's voice cut through the air. 20 war coins, the orc grunted. Fang Hao blinked. What? Ruor gestured toward the alley with a calloused hand. For 20 to 100 coins you can find anyone, elves, succubi, trolls. It satisfies the needs of those stranded here for business. Fang Hao looked back at the couple. This wasn't a romance, it was a transaction. They continued toward the city center, passing through layers of crowded streets until they reached a massive gray-white stone fortress. Guards stood watch, one a hulking orc, the other a dark-red demon with bull horns. After a brief inspection, the group was ushered inside, walking through bright marble corridors lined with portraits that added a heavy, artistic weight to the atmosphere. Inside the main hall, the crowd was a chaotic tapestry of strange races. Suddenly, Fang Hao felt eyes on him. A tall, tanned man in a tracksuit approached, his hand hovering over a lord's book at his waist. From Earth, the man asked, his voice hushed. Fang Hao nodded. The stranger leaned in, whispering with a smirk, "It's okay to have a backer, kid. Not everyone can be a legend like Fang Hao with no worries about food or clothes. But skeletons, you're braver than me." I stuck with the trolls. Fang Hao looked at the man's protectors, ferocious, armored trolls with massive fangs. "I haven't attached myself to anyone," Fang Hao replied calmly. "I developed everything on my own." The man's expression soured. "And what's there to pretend about? I was going to help you, but you're too arrogant." He snorted and walked away, returning to his troll companions with an obsequious smile. Finally, they reached the front desk, where a Tier 3 goblin teller sat perched on a high stool. The goblin squinted through his spectacles. "The Bone King, Audi's, is recommending a human," he shrieked. The entire hall went silent. Ruor stepped in quickly. "He is one of our faction. He just hasn't undergone the conversion ritual yet." The goblin shrugged, dipping his quill into the ink. "Fine name." Fang Hao spoke clearly. "Fang Hao." Clang. A sudden, violent crash echoed through the hall. The man in the tracksuit had fallen straight off his chair, his face pale with terror. He scrambled to his feet, eyes wide, realizing the nobody he had just mocked was the most powerful lord in the region. If you were to ask the time travelers what they truly feared, it wouldn't be the powerful foreign tribes. No, within their organization, everyone feared Fang Hao. He was the man who single-handedly fed the region, a god of death who had beheaded the arrogant Li Teng in under 30 minutes and posted the grim proof for all to see. Su Yang stood nearby, his heart hammering against his ribs, shuddering with regret. He had treated Fang Hao with sarcasm and disdain, only to realize he was standing next to a killer. Inside the bar, Fang Hao verified his identity. A goblin with a high-pitched voice slid a letter across the counter. It was stamped with the eye seal of the Tower of Pagodas. "Build the Sky Eye Alliance buildings," the goblin squeaked. "Complete 3 internal orders and you pass the test." Fang Hao took the architectural drawings and stepped back into the street, passing dark alleys where different races whispered in the shadows. Ruor, walking beside him, explained the cold reality of the merchant world. "The Alliance is a platform for the strong," Ruor muttered. 3 orders a week is the bare minimum. If you can't provide a stable supply, they'll cut you loose." They stopped before a 2-story stone building, the headquarters of the Sky Eye Merchant Alliance. Inside, a cacophony of noise filled the air. A goblin bartender, perched on a high chair, poured a glass of orange fruit wine. He looked at Fang Hao's fair skin and assumed he was human. But when the display cases for the human and elf factions refused to open, the goblin's brow furrowed. "What faction are you?" the goblin demanded. "The undead," Fang Hao replied calmly. The wine glass slipped, hitting the floor with a sharp clang. As the goblin recovered, Fang Hao scanned the items behind the counter. They were breathtaking and impossibly expensive. The dragon potion, 4.5 million war coins, the shattered star firearm blueprint, 6 million, and the blood cup, priced at a staggering 15.5 million. "I've got my eye on everything," Fang Hao admitted, "but I don't have the money." The goblin laughed loudly, wiping a fresh glass. "Everyone joins to make money, kid." Fang Hao looked at the treasures, then back at the goblin. "What if someone tried to rob this place?" The goblin sneered. "This continent has never lacked greedy, brainless people, but if they dared to rob us, they'd already be dead." Fang Hao returned to Ruor's side. a strange goblin drink in his hand. Ruhr watched him with newfound respect, noting that very few outsiders ever earn a goblin's hospitality. Anya, ever curious, took a bold sip, only for her expression to twist into a mask of pure disgust. She quickly spat the liquid back into the cup, hurriedly sliding it back to Fang Hao. Ruhr didn't miss a beat, launching into a lecture on the absolute power of warfare coins. With enough money, he claimed, you can buy anything from immortality to the strength of a god. He gestured toward the grand, four-story stone building across the street, the local auction house. It was a place where even the powerful Lord Audis came to rub elbows and scout the competition. After paying Ruhr for his guidance, the group departed, stepping through the teleportation array and returning home, while Anya hurried off to find Yer, intending to spin a wild, exaggerated tale of street battles and narrow escapes. Fang Hao headed straight for the market. He didn't just want to trade, he wanted to expand. With a surge of resources, the modest wooden stalls were consumed by a flash of light, replaced by a massive two-story stone structure, the Level 1 Merchant Alliance Hall. This was the seat of the Sky Eye Business Alliance within his borders. Fang Hao moved to recruit a skeleton merchant, paying 10 warfare coins and a wriggling spine. Suddenly, the air shimmered, his unique 100 times boost triggered, and instead of one merchant, 101 skeletons appeared. They were a sight to behold, dressed in fine, tailored clothes and clutching elegant canes. Their leader, a skeleton named Duojin, bowed low, his voice echoing with loyalty. "My lord," Duojin murmured, "we are at your service." Duojin stepped behind the counter and pressed a hidden mechanism. With a rhythmic splash, rows of containers slid open, revealing a permanent inventory of blueprints and alchemical wonders. Unlike the fleeting visits of traveling traders, these goods would remain on the shelves until Fang Hao was ready. He scanned the treasures and made his choice. He purchased the blueprints for the Ironclaw Rat Nest, the Black Iron Kite Shield, and the high-speed hardwood short bow. The foundation of his merchant empire was finally set. Fang Hao stood before the counter, clutching his newest acquisitions, blueprints for a black iron halberd and a trainee mage robe. As he finalized the purchase, the skeleton merchant Duojin slid 2 order forms across the wood. These forms were a lifeline, a way to request rare items from across the merchant alliance. Fang Hao hesitated, his mind racing. "Can I order corpses?" he asked. Duojin coughed dryly, his bones rattling. I understand, sir. But the Merchant Alliance has explicit regulations prohibiting the undead faction from purchasing alien corpses in any form." With a sigh, Fang Hao pivoted, ordering blueprints for undead unit buildings instead, but the real business was just begin. Duojin revealed a staggering statistic. There were 74,511 village-level forces awaiting merchants, 13,205 of which were human lords. "I will recruit enough merchants for them all," Fang Hao declared. He activated his unique power, and the 100-fold boost triggered with a blinding flash. Suddenly, 38,380 skeleton merchants filled the room and the courtyard beyond. Fang Hao didn't stop there. He moved to the warehouse, crafting black iron swords, helmets, and tools. With the 100-fold boost, a handful of iron became a mountain of armaments. "Distribute these to the human lords first," he instructed Duojin. "They need this equipment to survive." Exhausted but satisfied, Fang Hao transitioned back to his manor. The smell of a sumptuous lunch greeted him, prepared by the diligent Yer. He sat with her and the energetic Anya, listening to the girls' tales of past adventures. While he ate, he opened the Book of Lords to the regional chat. The channel was exploding. "Breaking news," one lord typed. "A merchant caravan finally arrived at my market, but it's led by a skeleton. The system says it's from Lord Fang Hao's territory." The comments flew thick and fast. "Fang Hao is undead. Is he even human anymore?" Fang Hao nearly choked on his food. To silence the rumors, he snapped a photo of his meal in his own hand and posted it to the channel. "I'm still human," he messaged. "I just have a special building." The chat went silent for a heartbeat, before erupting again. "Wait, look at the corner of the photo. Are those white legs? Boss Fang Hao really has girls in his territory."